It is still an open question how successful Trump was in actually blowing up elements of the program. But what he has definitely blown up is this incredibly vital willingness of the Iranian regime to allow inspectors in to look at stuff.
Hello and welcome to the More Freedom Foundation podcast. I'm Murray, in charge of podcasting, and in charge of politics, as always, is Robert Morris. How are you this time?
Not bad, Rory. I feel kind of like we're living in a new political era in New York City, and I think in the United States more broadly.
It seems like it's very warm there by the sounds of the fan.
It's definitely warm. It's still hot here. Actually, no, it was much warmer yesterday. Yesterday, I think, we wouldn't be able to record. It's still hot here today, but yesterday it was 20 degrees hotter. I know that doesn't mean much to the European audience, but it was very, very hot. But it's not just the physical environment I'm talking about here, Rory. I'm talking about the political environment.
See, I heard that the same bunch of people that caused 9/11 are now going to be in charge of New York City.
There you go. Exactly. That's definitely what's happening, Rory. And thank you for once again having your finger on the the worst things that the internet is saying. A couple of key things there. So Zohran Mamdani is not, in fact, a member of Al Qaeda, nor is he an anti-Semite, nor is he guaranteed to be the mayor of New York. What happened this past week was the Democratic Party primary, which in recent decades has been more or less the mayoral election, and then the November election is just a formality. But this time around, definitely, because Mamdani is the candidate and because Eric Adams, the disgraced incumbent mayor, is
always through Istanbul.
Yes, indeed. The guy who's one of the more cheaply bought high-profile politicians in New York history.
It is just weird that he was bought by the Turkish of all the countries.
It is fascinating. I think kind of the reason I think it was a habit he built up when he was a borough president, which is a almost uniquely powerless position. It's actually like a vestigial position in New York City government. Back in 1989, the Supreme Court decided that New York's way of governing itself was unconstitutional and ridiculous, partially because borough presidents had somewhat equal powers, despite the fact that the boroughs are completely different in terms of population terms. So the borough president position still exists. And when Eric Adams was a borough president, he was probably delighted for the small ball corruption of getting cheaper flights on Turkish Airlines. But it continued when he was mayor because, he's just not very good at things. Regardless, that is going to, that election is going to happen. Wealthy donors are talking about finding somebody else who's charismatic to run against both of them. So it's by no means guaranteed that Mamdani is going to be the mayor of New York City. It is the most likely result because he's already defeated an opponent that was likely to participate in the general election. This is Andrew Cuomo, who would have run again under his own party line if he had not been so completely humiliated in this primary election that took place.
Well, yeah, because in the debates, Mamdani, he basically was just talking about all the horrible things Cuomo has gone up to over the years. It was almost like a mini version of when Trump was running for the Republicans.
What's kind of fun is how all of the candidates, even candidates who had more reason to fear Mamdani, the actual eventual winner, they all hated Andrew Cuomo. It's and I think there was sort of blood in the water over the past couple of weeks where they're like, wait a second, there's an extraordinary, so Andrew Cuomo was the governor of New York who briefly was famous during COVID as, it wasn't hard to look better than Donald Trump, who was leading the country during COVID. Of course, it later came out that Andrew Cuomo was covering up widespread COVID deaths at nursing homes and was also accused of sexual harassment and was largely pretty disgraced. But it was interesting. He got an absurd amount of money for this mayoral race. There were super PACs who were putting in $26 million on top of everything else. And it was fascinating. One of his biggest donors said, oh, well, we saw Cuomo was running again and we were afraid he would win. So we just wanted to give him some money because he's pretty vindictive.
Okay.
So it was basically protection money. Yeah, that's
That's sort of terrifying.
yeah. So when it became clear that Cuomo was looking vulnerable, it seems like everybody in the mayoral race decided that they would do what they could to make sure he was never in power again, and they did, which I think is a good thing for New York, no matter what happens. I do want to say, so I think it is undeniable, and it is the case that in the closing weeks of the campaign, there was a full court press by not just the sort of standard Israel lobby, Israel superfans or what have you, but also by a lot of business people who didn't like his program more broadly to smear him as an anti-Semite. And that failed.
Yeah, but that seemed to just be because he was Muslim.
No, that's because of specific things that he's said. He's done a lot of specific things. He's very sympathetic to the student protesters that had been condemned as anti-Semitic. He quite bravely and correctly, I believe, refused to condemn the term intifada or globalize the intifada in the weeks coming up to it. And so that's all. But like, I think I've probably in my coverage on the YouTube channel have overemphasized the relevance of Israel here. 100%, his opponents tried to smear him with a lot of the same smears of what it is it's an incredibly broad definition of anti-Semitism that tries to say that any opposition to the state of Israel, and Zoran Mamdani has had very clear opposition to the state of Israel, for which I applaud him and I admire him. But what they attempted to do was turn that opposition into he's anti-Semitic, he's gonna do a pogrom in New York, all kinds of absurd, obscene things that people were saying, and it failed miserably, which is, I think, a great sign for U.S. politics. But it's not really fundamentally about Israel, and I think I should point out that he is a progressive mayor in a very new and interesting way.
Well, even his advertising is just feels like, oh yeah, he's turned a computer on in the past 20 years. Like
Yeah,
a lot of American ads seem very trapped in like the 1980s
Mhm.
and 90s, while he has sort of fresh, modern ads and he meets these people out and about in New York.
Well, it's an undeniable fact that he's literally half the age of Andrew Cuomo, who was the guy who was expected to win.
Because he's
And
early 30s, isn't he?
I think he's like 33. Yeah. So he's a digital native. He has that sense, but he also has a politics that I think has a real appeal. We've talked a lot on this podcast about how we need to get away from Reaganism. We need to, and I think that the first crop of progressive mayors, motivated by the very real, very horrific, and still very open issue of police violence, were sort of allowed themselves to get corralled into a lot of, for lack of a better term, a lot of sort of woke DEI nonsense that didn't actually end up attacking any of the problems that affect everybody. And what's interesting about Mamdani and his messaging is he's not talking about the cops. He's not talking about, despite personally being kind of a civil rights victory to have gotten as far as he has, he doesn't really focus on sort of white privilege or this, that, and the other thing. What he focuses on is wealth privilege. He is actually going back to not like a new left 1960s intersectional, blah, 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 which is really, really, really easy to divert away from rich people and allow rich people to keep doing whatever they're doing to make the world worse. He's actually kind of like an old left, a real sort of Bernie Sanders type instead of like
I heard the thing that seemed to scare a lot of the wealthy people in America or in New York is he seems to be going after basically taxing millionaires, billionaires, and trying to bring in rent freezes.
These are all policies he's going to approach. And again, to be clear, and I've said this before, and I still believe this, the chances of ridiculous failure are high, but these are absolutely things that I believe need to be tried and need to be tried at the local level across this country. It takes a while before you find the mix of policies and approaches that actually work.
It's seen as this could be the start of the Democrats maybe moving away from sort of the right center and might actually be closer to, a Bernie kind of reality.
No question. The enthusiasm, the incredible
He's young,
success.
charismatic, and he wants free buses.
Yeah, no, so it's yeah, so I do just want to sort of talk about that Mamdani thing again, point out it is not about Israel. However, the rest of this episode is 100% about
Mhm.
Israel.
Although I
Uh,
do remember the debates where basically all of them were like, "Well, I've been to Tel Aviv 7 times. Well, I live there all the time." I was like, What is this for?" I'm surprised they just don't go, "New York's the second best city. We all know which is the best."
oh, well, there's a member of the Trump administration who's currently being pilloried. I can't recall what her exact role is for saying, well, America's the best country on the planet except for Israel,
Wow.
which is pretty extraordinary.
It's sort of beyond parody, isn't it?
It is, in fact, beyond parody. So, and I think that that is also a good segue because elements of what has happened, I guess Donald Trump loves naming things. I guess we'll call it the 12-Day War, as Donald Trump insisted. This war between Israel and Iran involves some of the most serious and calamitous decisions made, I believe, by a U.S. president, an Israeli prime minister, and Iran's entire leadership. Some of the dumbest, worst, most grave and destructive decisions of this century so far, but is also beyond parody. It's deeply, deeply funny, specifically how this war ended on Monday, June 23rd. It is beyond
Who knew
parody.
that all you needed to end a war was a president to swear?
Yeah, it's well, that's one of the most extraordinary things about this, and really gets back to, of course, condemning Donald Trump, but really condemning Joe Biden. Because, and this also, Mamdani also plays in here a little bit. I actually don't believe that Joe Biden was joined at the hip with Israel out of electoral considerations. I don't believe that he was bribed or threatened
Yeah.
by AIPAC or anything like that. Joe Biden was a true believer. Like Joe Biden,
If Israel did not exist, we would make an Israel.
yes, but I think the incredible calamitousness of that decision for his party is illustrated by the fact that in the most Jewish city in the world, New York City, far outpacing Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, a mayoral candidate was able to win the Democratic primary without doing that kowtowing, but also just the power that a president has. At every step of this war from Friday, June 13th until Monday, June 23rd, Donald Trump held the reins.
Yeah.
Historians will probably argue over the extent to which he personally actually wanted the attack to happen on Friday, June 13th. But after it did happen, so it was, I guess, Friday, June 13th in Israel and Iran, but it hit Thursday evening of June 12th is when the news hit in the United States. People go back and forth because, and Trump himself makes it very confusing because once it became clear that Israel's initial attack had been stunningly successful, Donald Trump started claiming credit for it and saying, "Of course, this is what I meant to do. This is, this was totally my idea."
And
But a
wasn't
lot
the
of
negotiations like a smokescreen apparently to distract them or something?
Well, that's the question. That's probably so. The theme of this episode is definitely Iran versus Israel. Everybody lost. I mean, really, everybody lost here. The Iranians lost
Oh yeah, yeah.
spectacularly and horrifically in the beginning. The Israelis were clearly, to my mind, losing by the end, which is why the United States and Donald Trump stepped in this way. And if the United States or anybody in the world has any interest in not just Iran not having a nuclear weapon, but anybody in the world not making the choice to go for a nuclear weapon, that has been that cause has been set back catastrophically. So frankly, everybody lost. And of course, the United States lost because we, wasted billions upon billions more dollars and time and precious munitions.
But it did also show that America is absolutely top dog. Like no other country could do such an operation.
I mean, sure, but why would any country want to do such an operation? And did it actually do us any good? But yeah, to go back to, so the president, so basically in the run up to this conflict, Donald Trump, Steve Witkoff, and other people in his orbit, some in his cabinet, some not, were attempting to get a deal between Iran and the United States. And some people still argue, and I think this is plausible, but It's plausible, but it doesn't exonerate Donald Trump in any way in
Hmm.
my eyes. It's plausible that Donald Trump really did want to continue negotiating, and he really didn't want Israel to do this. And it sounds like there was a phone call between Netanyahu and Trump where he expressed that he really didn't want Israel to do it. But sort of as, it's Trump speaking and deal making and just being Trump. At some point he said, well, you could do it if you want. And that was enough of a green light for
Oh.
Netanyahu. So that's one of the current understandings. I think that Iran is entirely justified in believing that all of this was a ruse, that
Hmm.
all of this
Oh yeah, it's
was
hard to not see it from
yeah,
Iran's perspective.
yeah. I'm not honestly convinced because I do think it's plausible that Donald Trump is stupid enough that he sort of gave Netanyahu permission to do this without meaning to.
Because yeah, it's one of those things when you read like a transcript of Donald Trump, it's very confusing, and you can quite often, inter yes or no or whatever. But is it
Exactly.
possible his team were deliberately misleading him? They were kind of more
100%.
aware of what Israel was up to, so Donald was like doing his own little sideshow, and then once
Absolutely.
he found out the full sort of severity of the situation, kind of, it's almost like he's like power. Doesn't have much power when it's like behind the scenes, so he has to show the public like this is exactly what I think. He's talking on Truth
Mhm.
Social. He's swearing on the TV as if to say, "Look, this is enough. This is my power. Please stop."
Well, I think that's a really key insight, Rory, is that like we laugh about his government by tweet,
Hmm.
but it's because he is, as I think most U.S. presidents are, is so poorly served by a mutinous, rebellious national security establishment and military, specifically military. I don't
Hmm.
generally like to go after the military that much. I mean, I have a lot of respect for people who serve, less respect as we move up the officer hierarchy. But
Hmm.
in this instance, it is not just the schmucks at the National Security Council. Whereas under Biden, it was really like Anthony Blinken, Brett McGurk specifically. I mean, these people belong in hell. They are
Mm.
absolute. They are bloodthirsty monsters. They are indefensible, awful people. Under the Trump administration, it's a bunch of dumb, in some cases like drunks, like Pete Hegseth, like just a very uneven.
Yeah, like he's just a Fox host who's very aggressive.
Yeah, this is the Secretary of Defense is a national joke. But the military has really, really taken the lead here. And
Hmm.
even as Trump was saying, no, 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 no war, we're not going to do this, Michael Kurilla, the head of CENTCOM, was working really, really hard to establish the possibility for Israel to do whatever it wanted. Aircraft carriers and the naval ships and the THAAD batteries, and I believe
Hmm.
some Patriot batteries, were all put in place and kept in place at incredible expense to give Netanyahu the ability to launch a war whenever he wanted. And I think that's a key part of this. Like Trump was like, no, 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 no. I don't want war. I want to negotiate. We're going to negotiate. I'm not the war guy. I don't like war, blah, 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 blah. But Kurilla, with the, no doubt with the acquiescence of a lot of incredibly weak personalities, like Pete Hegseth, the drunk in the Trump administration, was putting everything in place. So all you needed was Netanyahu to get on the phone and hear no, 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 no. Well, maybe if you wanna, and then
Hmm.
boo, they're off to the
Yeah.
races. I got a maybe if you wanna from Trump. He calls up his buddy Kurilla, who's and like this is I think you can get in a lot of go in a lot of sinister directions about oh, is CENTCOM actually really controlled by Israel? But no, I think it's really actually quite straightforward, and we saw this with Jim Mattis as well. We have an officer class in the United States that is incredibly angry at Iran because Iran has killed probably Iran is the state actor, not like a terrorist group, not an insurgency, but Iran is the state actor that has absolutely killed the most US soldiers in working memory.
Hmm. But
Um
this is going back decades. This isn't
No, well,
recently.
you're I think you're thinking of the Lebanon, the Marine barracks bombing, which is blamed on Iran and Hezbollah. I think
Hmm.
probably unfairly to an extent, maybe fairly. I don't know. But that's actually not what I'm talking about here, though a lot of these men, I think Mattis in particular, were sort of young Marines when that was happening. What I think is worse for Kurilla, for Jim Mattis, who was a very famous Marine, is the Iraq War insurgency. So what happened after 9/11 was Iran helped us conquer Afghanistan, and then George W. Bush declared war against Iran. After they'd helped us took Afghanistan, the Iranians were so terrified that they came to George W. Bush and said, well, here's a deal. We'll give you everything. We'll give you so many more things. This is, after Saddam Hussein had initially fallen, and the Bush administration was like, nah, we're coming for you. So the Iranians were like, oh, well, gee whiz, I guess we'd better fund an insurgency in Iraq. And that's what they did. And that, I don't know, Ted Cruz's figure was that 600 U.S. soldiers, the deaths of 600 U.S. soldiers can be attributed to Iranian-sponsored insurgents specifically in Iraq. And that is what Michael Kurilla's anger at Iran is about. And I get it. But again, we declared war against them. We invaded their neighbor and said we were coming for them. What exactly did you expect Iran to do in this situation?
Well, just to give that context of that, that's how many have been killed in Iran in this recent conflict, is about 610.
So there you go. Michael Kurilla got his vengeance in dead babies and dead women and a few dead military figures as well. I hope Michael Kurilla is happy with all those dead women and babies for his vengeance.
Well, and according to human rights activists in Iran, it's even higher. It's about 1,000. So
yeah, the 1,000 was the number I was working with, but all of these numbers are always in
it's sadly going up. They rarely
did
go down.
Did the Iranian government come out with something? I feel like
their numbers are 610.
610, all right.
And 4,700 wounded.
Though Iran has an interest in that being smaller so as to not look like they've
been completely humiliated.
So I think that's a really key dynamic here that we have to call out, which is really like we're getting into Douglas MacArthur territory. Douglas MacArthur was a very famous U.S. general from the 1930s to the 1950s. I think he was a general probably earlier than that, but was famous for ignoring presidential orders, and that came to a head under President Truman in Korea, and he lost his job for that. I really think that, of course, there's no actual example of Michael Kurilla denying Trump's orders here, but it does seem like all of his actions leading up to this conflict were to facilitate this conflict, even though Donald Trump, the elected U.S. president by a majority of U.S. voters, said he really, really, really didn't want to do this. And Michael Kurilla put everything in place to allow Israel to do this. And that's a really important dynamic.
Is it sad that, from my understanding, it's a lot to do with internal Israeli politics, and it looked like Benjamin Netanyahu was about to lose his position, possibly go to jail. So instead of accepting reality, it's like start a war. Is it sad that America is like gung ho and happy to jump in just to help what is quite a small party infighting?
It's tremendously sad, but it's important to remember that we've helped Netanyahu from the get-go. Like, Netanyahu is our guy. His period of time, like, I talk a lot about the military-industrial complex. It is, and this is a celebrated thing, I don't think it's good for Israel. Basically, under Netanyahu, the Israeli economy has been completely subsumed by the U.S. military-industrial complex. People love to talk about startup Israel and da-da-da-da. All of that tech is defense tech. All of that garbage is...
Oh, yeah, because they are complete masters of cybersecurity, for instance.
Exactly. And but it goes beyond that. It's weapons systems, it's cybersecurity, it's internet stuff. It is, Netanyahu has overseen and profited massively from Israel becoming a subsidiary of the U.S. military-industrial complex, becoming owned and operated by a bunch of U.S. military-industrial complex companies. So even after Netanyahu has been proved to be, the guy who oversaw the largest loss of life, I think, Israel's history, full stop. This is a guy who, and also his strategy of going after the West Bank Palestinian Authority, people who wanted to work with him instead of the Hamas people that he had supported funding, who wanted, who were quite explicit and had, practically publicized all their plans. The fact that I think it's shameful that the Israel supporters in the United States, it's shameful and telling that Israel supporters in the United States are much more interested in defending Netanyahu, because he's a part of our, military industrial complex, and are not paying any attention to the absolute calamities he has brought to Israel. And to be clear, this, what we're talking about here, the 12-day war, is also a tremendous calamity brought about by Netanyahu. And you're exactly right. This was, there was no, and that needs to be emphasized, and thank you for reminding me of that, there was no urgency here. None at all. None. Iran has been, 2 weeks, 6 months away from a bomb for 25 years. That's actually
Yes, because
completely true.
he's been saying that. Is it from the 80s or from the 90s? Benjamin's been saying that.
Since the 90s, at least, he's been saying that. And it's true. It's absolutely true. Iran has been very close to a nuclear bomb for a long period of time, and it has not gotten a nuclear bomb because it has chosen not to. That's a really key point here. It has not gotten a nuclear bomb because it has chosen not to, not because it's virtuous, not because of the fatwa. There's actually like a fatwa from the supreme leader saying nuclear weapons are evil and we won't do that. No, the reason that Iran has not gotten a nuclear weapon is because they're incredibly hopeful and peace-oriented, and because they somehow still believed until Saturday, June 21st, they still believed that they could actually get a diplomatic deal without being struck by the United States. They still believed that it was possible to rejoin the community of nations if they used their nuclear program as sort of a bargaining chip.
A leverage, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's over because of the U.S. attack on Iran's nuclear program.
Do you think if Trump hadn't intervened, that we would have had a ground invasion, or would it just be bombings galore from America?
We're never doing, never is a very strong term, but we're not doing a ground invasion of Iran under the current U.S. political dispensation.
Because I heard one theory was that the idea, because from what I understand is you have the Revolutionary Guard and then you have like the normal army. The Revolutionary Guard kind of was hoping for like a Vietnam-style scenario where America would invade on the ground and it would be able to hold off for, say, a decade or two. This is their, big or their grand strategy, is if it was able to defeat America, it would sort of kind of destroy the illusion that these mountain people in Persia would be able to defeat this great empire. Could you see that happening, or is it just like, no, they're never doing that?
That was never happening. Like, yeah, that was never happening. I don't think Iran thought that was ever happening. That was, this is, special forces going in and doing like assassinations. Israel's already doing that kind of thing, but like large scale 2003 Iraq style, no. We don't have the money for that. We don't have the political will for that. We don't have the money for that. That is not happening outside of the context of like, maybe if like Iran nuked New York City or something, like maybe that would happen.
I don't think the missiles are able to reach as far as Britain, so I think you're okay, Rob.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to imagine a context in which there was no ground invasion. There was never going to be a ground invasion. Actually, to stop Iran from having a nuclear bomb now, you would have to do a ground invasion, but that's not, we're not going to do that. We were never going to do that, nor should we, nor should we want to. But that's a really key point here, is that like of course the Iranians were, and there's some Israeli intelligence that our intelligence agency said, didn't make any sense to us. Tulsi Gabbard had come out in recent months saying, no, Iran is not doing a sprint to a bomb. But Netanyahu, surprisingly, whose continued political survival depended on looking as aggressive as possible, tells us, oh no, we've got special super secret evidence that nobody's ever actually seen.
Even though, American intelligence is saying they're years away.
Yeah, famously.
And I think even if they have enriched it, there's still so much involved in miniaturization and making it a missile and all the sort of stuff you would overlook that, they're quite far away from it.
Oh, I don't think they're that far.
Okay.
I think Tulsi Gabbard came out and said is that she saw nothing that indicated that they were going for it. And there's a lot of confusion here around the enrichment topic. Iran had gone up to 60% enriched uranium, and there is not like a civilian purpose for 60% enriched uranium. But it's not like Iran was doing this secretly. Like Iran was doing this because of the United States ripping up the nuclear deal. Iran was doing this because of the threats that the Trump administration, the Biden administration, and the new Trump administration were saying. They were doing this because of the sanctions that are, murdering Iranian people. Like some of the strongest and most brutal sanctions in human history are put on Iran. And the reason they're enriching is to say, look, we can do this. Come and make the same deal with us you made back in 2015, goddammit, and then we'll give it all to you again.
Because as you said before, the sanctions tend to just make the leaders stronger and the people weaker.
I mean, it depends. Syria is the great counterexample. But yeah, certainly what the sanctions did in Iran was wipe out the middle class that was the biggest enemy of the regime. But that's sort of like a different set of topics.
Mhm.
But basically, like they were enriching uranium far beyond the necessity.
I think it's around 90 is what everyone's been saying. So 60 shows that you're on your way because it is beyond anything civilian purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, whether I think the degree to which they had 90% enriched was like I think a subject of some contention. But like what's also key here is like this is not like some like big secret. There's a reason why we have a ton of insight here, is that and this is what has been destroyed by Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu, is that this has been a 20-year journey, or maybe 2006 sticks in my mind of sort of when the updated oversight. Like the reason we know about Natanz, the reason we know about Isfahan, the reason we know about Fordow is not because of Israeli or American intelligence. We know about these sites because the Iranian government scrupulously details what they're doing with their nuclear program, provides that information to the International Atomic Energy Agency. I think that's what the IAEA stands for. There are, under Rafael Grossi, I believe an Italian guy, there are tons of inspectors on the ground in Iran constantly supervising what Iran is doing. And I think there's that context is often left out. Because that's past tense, Rory. That's a thing that was like the borderline. It's a Spanish diplomat who came out with a pretty good, I think it's Eduardo Mora perhaps, came out with a pretty good summing up of this. Like the whole baseline of these negotiations was there are tons of international inspectors constantly in Iran, not as spies, but at the invitation of the Iranian government, facilitated by the Iranian government to go make surprise inspections at all of these nuclear sites. That is why Israel and America had the information necessary to attempt to destroy them. It is still an open question whether, how successful Trump was in actually blowing up elements of the program. But what he has definitely blown up is this incredibly vital willingness of the Iranian regime to allow inspectors in to look at stuff. That's probably, I mean, it's not 100%. The Iranian Majlis, their parliament, has voted almost unanimously to kick these inspectors out.
Okay.
That's what Trump and Netanyahu's main accomplishment is here, is to not just destroy the current round of Iranian nuclear diplomacy, but to completely destroy the possibility of future Iranian diplomacy. It has been that is a cataclysmic failure for the world. If the Iranian or U.S. governments were at all honest about wanting to prevent a nuclear bomb, then they have lost as well. But I don't think that's actually I think it is vastly more important for Israel and the United States, not humanity, but for Israel and the United States government's priorities to preserve Iran as a rogue state, as a nasty enemy that they can use as a boogeyman. That is what Israel acted to destroy here, and got the incredibly foolish and incompetent Donald Trump to co-sign, was the possibility of any real diplomacy around Iran's nuclear program.
Has Israel shown just what a complete non-threat Iran is? Because it seemed to be flying 200 aircraft at one point. Like it had complete air supremacy, and it's basically made it look like they're not that much of a threat. Because I remember when they were asking Turkey to help them find their president, like It seems like they're significantly further down the pecking order than, like, Israel would like everyone to believe.
I think there's two things that are true here. A, Iran and the axis of resistance were never really much of a threat to Israel. Like
Hmm.
I think that's true. But they were never much of a threat to Israel outside of the context that Israel created. This kind of like
Hmm.
shooting war, like this full-on shooting war that Iran definitely did not win. I think the proclamations of Israeli military victory here are very premature and I think very exaggerated. They were certainly saying they had complete air superiority over Iran. That was never true. Iran was firing missiles throughout the conflict, even famously at the very end of the conflict. What they asserted was that they had complete control over Tehran, which may have been true for certain periods of time, but this was not sustainable for the Israeli government or the American government.
But is the classic Israeli thing not to do is just use up all your missiles, then go, please, can we have some more, America?
That's exactly what happened this time, except this was actually, I mean, from the get-go, because of Michael Kurilla, the Israelis were benefiting massively from U.S. support from their surprise attack Friday, June 13th. It's
Mm.
interesting, Marco Rubio came out and said, we had nothing to do with this once that attack started. And then the next day, Trump was like, oh, no, it looks really cool and successful. This was all me, which is a very Trump thing to do. So
Yeah.
it is important to point out that on Friday, June 13th, it was a humiliating loss for Iran. Just an very similar in a lot of striking ways to what happened to what Israel did to Hezbollah in the fall of, I think, October of 2024. Took out, it was a huge deal in 2020 when Donald Trump took out Qasem Soleimani, the head of the IRGC. That was a big deal. Basically, Israel took out all of Qasem Soleimani's successors and
Hmm.
colleagues in a single evening. I think they were lured into one meeting that was blown up, which is also very similar to what happened to the Hezbollah leadership.
And we also had lorries filled with drones that attacked missile silos.
Yep, there's footage of special force. I don't know if it's Israeli special forces or Iranian agents of Israel launching all kinds of stuff. The Israelis did a whole bunch of car bombs. This is not
Wow.
so
I didn't hear about
publicized.
that.
Yeah, it's not so publicized, the series
No.
of car bombings, because car bombings don't have the most, non-terroristic connotations. So, yeah, tremendously impressive wiping out of as much of the Iranian capacity as they could. I read some coverage indicating that actually the Iranian stockpile of missiles was still largely intact, but the Israelis had managed to disable the entrances to those stockpiles,
Hmm.
which was really impacting the
Well, because I heard
frequency.
what was happening. Usually they would fire as many missiles as they could at once, but they were sort of more intermittent because of Israel had destroyed so much of the launch facilities.
That is, yeah, that is definitely one of the interpretations that have been advanced. For me, Thursday evening, sort of the morning of Friday in the United States, was very interesting, just sort of following this, because it really looked like, wow, had Iran just been taken out in like a single evening? Like, my gosh. And Brett McGurk, friend of the show, Brett McGurk, the quite loathsome Biden administration guy we've done whole episodes on, went on CNN to say, well, actually, maybe this is it. Maybe Iran's just been beaten because
Hmm.
Israel killed all the people who would have been pushing the buttons.
And we could have killed the Ayatollah if we
Mm.
wanted to.
Yeah, that sort of thing. He was, as is often the case with Brett McGurk's understanding of the Middle East, he was contradicted in that within hours. When I mean, let's be clear here. Like the estimates are coming out, and something along the lines of 15 to $20 billion of damage has been done to the Israeli civilian economy.
Is that when you include like people leaving and not going to work because they're worried about being attacked, or is this just physically like damage done to buildings?
That's a great question. I'm just going from the headline, but I would guess it would be physical damage to buildings. Like,
Because I know there's a lot of Israelis moving to Cyprus and Romania and stuff and waiting this out.
sure, a lot of missiles hit Israel after the first So essentially, you had, that Friday, just pure triumphalism. It looked so exciting and successful that Donald Trump decided this is my party now. But in the initial days after that weekend, it began to become clear that Iran had not, in fact, been stopped from being able to send these weapons out. We quickly got fairly in the first days we got fairly exhaustive description of the fact that Iran was able to blow up the military headquarters in the heart of Tel Aviv, like fairly serious strikes. And then the Israeli government had actually some conflict with Fox News and really shut down on reporting of damage
Oh,
because it was it was a propaganda win for Iran. And it appears that certainly the rate of fire was diminishing from Iran, but the effectiveness of that fire was accelerating. They were firing fewer missiles and hitting more targets, implying that Iran was actually learning. And there's
because I've heard
another.
that, well, the Iranian missiles maybe aren't as accurate. And then another thing with the Iron Dome is it will prioritize. So if it's somewhere in the middle of nowhere or where there's Palestinians, won't protect it as much and will let it hit that, and then try to defend where there's highly populated areas more likely. So not everything coming through is necessarily an Iranian win.
For sure. But there's also an indication that Iran wasn't actually firing its biggest and most impressive
Yeah.
missiles, and started doing that towards the final days of the conflict, which was having some psychological and I don't know about military, but was certainly having a psychological effect
Well, I
on the
guess when
Israeli
you've
populace.
when you've told your people you've been at war for what 2 years now, and you've had very little kickback, and then to actually get a bit back, are getting, is this the Saudi Arabian medicine?
I think so. I think Israel definitely has more durability and sort of
Yeah.
toughness than Saudi Arabia, which is basically trying to make this pitch that like, oh, we're the fun new place for business. Come see us, and then the Houthis bomb their
Hmm.
F1 race, and that sort of gets in the way of that sort of thing. But no, I think Israel, there's definitely reserves of toughness. They
Hmm.
absolutely have. Very few Israelis were killed during this conflict because they have really, really advanced early warning systems and shelters and this, that, and other thing. But what's important here, another important dynamic here, was just the amount of money that Israel and the United States were churning through. There's an interesting arms control wonk article talking about like how many of these Arrow interceptors, THAAD interceptors. I mean, there was some. It's all a little.
Oh yeah, it's so hard to comprehend.
It's hard to comprehend, and also he's working with open source information. Is that another
Yeah,
thing?
things can
But
be
the
more expensive or cheaper, or yeah.
but there was something absurd in there. There was like 40 THAAD interceptors had been used, or 35, or something along those lines, and that's $1 billion right there. And
Just to go back to our potentially new mayor of New York that wants free buses, could that give everyone in America free transport?
Oh yeah, that $1 billion. I mean, it's certainly everybody in New York City. I don't
Hmm.
know about, and I don't know for how long, but yeah, that's $1 billion just for the THAAD interceptors, and I think we make I think there's something like we only make like 50 of them a year, or something like that. So a day or two into this conflict, the Wall Street Journal was already reporting that Israel was running out of interceptors, and as a broader issue, there were more and more publicized complaints from the rest of the U.S. military talking about, gee whiz, like we're running through all of the U.S. military stocks. And this was just to do a 12-day war. It is, I think, fascinating that Trump and Netanyahu are famously pretty bloody-minded, violent
Hmm.
people who like to continue to win and destroy things and like to be dominating and like to. I think it's very telling that both of them conceded to end this conflict in a mere 12 days when supposedly Iran was on its knees and was being defeated and all we had to do was bat cleanup. Yet Netanyahu felt compelled to stop. I think that's really telling, and I almost think that this choice, this incredibly ruinous, idiotic, stupid choice to bomb Fordow and Natanz and Isfahan by the U.S. government was mostly so the United States could do something that looked pretty tough at the end to sort of put a finality on it, and also to basically put another level of threat towards the Iranians, which essentially said, well, if you push this further, if you continue this fight, then the United States is going to jump in as well.
hmm
So, like, absolutely, I agree entirely.
But it's almost a bit like what Iran then also did, didn't it? Attack a base that basically says, please leave and move all your stuff. We're going to attack this.
Oh yeah, it's the same retaliation.
hmm
That I mean, I saw some suggestion, and it was so widely telegraphed that the Iranians felt that they had been warned to clear out their stuff from Fordow, and that's one of
Oh yeah,
the.
that's also what I've heard because there's some reports. There's this leaked Pentagon report, so I don't know whether that's just to sort of make out like, please come back and wreck Iran some more because you didn't do a good enough job. And I don't know why it would have been leaked and all the rest. But yeah, it's basically saying it's not that badly hit, but I'm pretty sure it's not in a good way, Rob.
Well, no, but that's a really interesting question because, and I've actually seen some agonizing over this for anti-interventionists. It's like just let Trump and Netanyahu believe they destroyed it all. Obviously they didn't, but like just let them believe it. Stop, and
Oh yeah, it's like don't have
Mhm.
a smarmy journalist that might start up more of a war.
Yeah, like
If
the
they
ta-
what's the thing, taco?
yeah, the taco guy,
Don't
exactly.
taco Trump. Just say he's great and give
Yeah,
him a
just say he
medal.
got it, he won, let's stop the war. Yeah. And I'm sympathetic to that. But it is an important question, and I'm very firmly in the camp that destroying things never actually helps. But it also just doesn't make sense if you have any knowledge of what the actual threat environment is here or what the actual state of negotiations used to be. This
Mm,
was the great threat. This was the great, John McCain's little song, "Bomb, bomb, 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 Iran."
yeah.
20 years ago. This is what the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, Israel's think tank in Washington D.C. was like arguing for decades. This is what every hawk, Lindsey Graham, all these people really, really, really wanted, and it was a damn squib. Like it just didn't actually. You're not actually going to physically destroy Iran's nuclear program at this point because it is a country of 90 million people that has been putting tons of resources into developing this capacity for decades. The U.S. and Israeli military have slaughtered something like 30 odd nuclear scientists over the past 12
Yeah,
days
it's been staggering.
and all their families, like all their wives and children as
Is
well,
it
which
because
is
they're doing a,
disgusting.
a, a term I'm going to coin bedroom bombs, where they just find out where they live and then fire a bomb at where they live under the assumption they'll be in bed?
Yeah, pretty much. It's been quite effective. It's been murderously
Oh
effective.
yeah, well, this is something that the Americans have had. I think, are they using kinetic energy? Like basically, the missile can hit within a meter or less, so it can pretty much hit a car. And because it's going so fast, it doesn't need an explosion. So they can be very precise. So it's just sad when you see the amount of devastation that's still going on in Gaza because they keep firing tank rounds at starving people trying to get aid.
Well, they're not. I mean, it's not. I think there was some discussion that there were some very precise attacks at the beginning of this conflict on Iran.
Oh, and then it got a bit
Well, no,
sloppy.
there's just been whole families have been wiped out to go after a single civilian scientist.
Who seems to be doing their best to work with the international community.
Exactly. And that's the key thing. Look, so Iran 100% was humiliated at the outset. Absolutely a military, and apparently if you thought the Iranian regime was bloodthirsty before, the purges they're going through right now, the people, the innocent and guilty people who must be being tortured
Yeah.
to death right now to find all of these Mossad infiltrators. It's very dark times in Tehran right now. But the whole point of this regime, the whole point of their brutalities, the whole point of their extremism is this is what's necessary to defend Iran from the great Satan and the little Satan. When the United States does satanic stuff like
Mhm.
bomb them, like murder 1,000 Iranians, that's a tremendous legitimacy boost for the regime.
Because the big thing Netanyahu seemed to be wanting is obviously America to do a lot of the work, but then Iran to also do the work for him. As in, Israel is way ahead when it comes to air defenses and all the rest, but it significant. If it was to go toe to toe to try to invade on its own, it couldn't because they have what 10 times the population, and historically it's incredibly mountainous, and it is a large country, so it would be unable to fulfill that. So they were wanting basically to cause a rebellion, and the Iranian people would do it for him.
Yeah.
Have we seen much evidence of this?
None.
None.
Like, and there's some pretty, is I'm using the word interesting footage of like uncovered women in Tehran, so more Western, moderate oriented, being like, "Where's our nuke? Where's our nuke? We're getting bombed like this. We've been sanctioned."
Oh yeah, that
like
was
this.
the big thing. People were sort of criticizing, saying like, all of this was in aid of making sure we were protected, and where were you?
Yeah. So essentially, yeah, I think that this has crafted a ton of legitimacy. All of our friends, all of the moderates in Iran who've been trying to figure out a way to negotiate. I mean, they were already incredibly discredited, but this has completely destroyed any legitimacy they might have had. I think it's probably true, and this is very standard analysis. Pretty much everybody will tell you this. Big hawks, big peace sticks. It's probably true that the actual, like the mad mullahs, the theocracy itself has been pretty discredited. And I think it's an open question as to like, who the next supreme leader is going to be. Maybe the whole supreme leader structure gets really downgraded. I don't know. But the successor, the most likely successor is the IRGC, is the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps, the sort of special military that's more powerful than the military, that's been in charge of all the international support of militias and whatnot, that the United States government has designated a terrorist something or other. I can't recall what class of classification it has gotten. So yeah, like it's not like it's worth saying that this has been an incredibly counterproductive and stupid and useless use of Israeli and U.S. munitions and money and moral. It has ruined diplomacy. It has destroyed Trump's diplomacy. It has sent the message to every person in the world that it is better to have a nuclear weapon than to negotiate around a nuclear
Because
weapon.
Pakistan's not getting attacked by Israel.
No.
Are you surprised that they're trying to sort of, a lot of the media seems to be sort of framing like Russia as like Iran's best friend, when in reality it's a bit like, we really like Israel, and the second most spoken language in Israel is Russian. Like, are you surprised that Russia is surprisingly neutral in all this, but yet they're being portrayed as like the Ayatollah's best friend?
Well, I mean, Russia, I think it's not surprising to me at all that Iran has gotten essentially nothing out of Russia
Yeah.
over the course of this conflict. And I think that's probably prompting some reflection. But I think it just underlines again that like there is no axis of evil. There is no axis of resistance. There was an axis of resistance funded by Iran, and it was quickly destroyed. Like there's no like Russia, China, and Iran don't love each other, aren't making plans to undermine us. It's just a collection of countries that have been abused and attacked by the United States, who are like, well, shit, I guess we'll, try to talk to each other. Oh, wait, there's nothing we can actually do for each other. Like that's sort of the state of things. North Korea has actually provided real services to Russia in its invasion of Ukraine, but that is a very, very rare thing. Iran has sold a lot of drones to Russia, but when the rubber hit the road, and yeah, like in the initial days, the Iranian regime looked very shaky. Now they look consolidated and rushing towards a nuclear bomb, but they looked very shaky. And at that key moment of Iranian vulnerability, Russia was nowhere. This is not a real alliance we are fighting. This is just
No.
a bunch of peons that occasionally get together to do some group therapy over how we're brutalizing it. It's not, yeah, like there's very little about this is serious. And I think really the final most important message here is that everybody lost. It really, it's just everybody lost. Nobody won here. It was a tremendous waste of resources and time. It is worth just the pure comedy routine of Monday morning. Like, it is rare when I am looking at my cell phone to like sort of catch up on the news and just to find myself like regularly breaking out laughing because of the pure just WTF-ism of the way that Trump ended this conflict. And yeah, who knows? I mean, we're recording this Thursday. It'll be going up Monday. We could very well be back in the middle of conflict again.
But yeah, as speaking, has the ceasefire been for 2 days now and it's holding?
Yeah, I think the ceasefire is holding, and I think both the Iranians and the Israelis are so exhausted, and I think Donald Trump personally is so pissed off at the Iranians. I believe that, actually. I don't think that's just for show. But just that extraordinary comment when he was walking to the helicopter, was that Monday morning or Tuesday morning? Just like,
you know what, we basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
And absolutely, and specifically complaining about how the Israelis
they seem to get the maximum hatred in that conversation,
which makes perfect sense. I mean, they dragged us into this, and it's completely against. They dragged us into this with the intention of dragging us further into it.
Well, it's up to you to finish it off, Rob.
Yeah, it's entirely
Israel's just the ideas guy.
Yeah, and so basically, Israel stripped Donald Trump of his chance for a Nobel Peace Prize. Honestly, it would have been laughable. It would have been ridiculous. But I do think that if Donald Trump had basically redone the JCPOA with Iran, basically redone the Iran nuclear deal, which was a phenomenal deal, by the way, if basically redone Obama's nuclear deal, I think he probably would have gotten the Nobel Peace Prize. And really, the whole point of Israel launching this attack on Iran was to stop that from happening. And I think they have effectively stopped that from happening. I mean, if you were Iran, would you ever trust anything that these people, tried to tell you again? Of course not. Of course not. So yeah, I think that's just sort of where we are now.
Okay, in a terrifying nether zone.
Yeah, and I don't expect that this will continue. But I mean, just the fact that, and I think it's obviously an indictment of Donald Trump's mental capacities, the dignity of the presidency under Trump, or what have you, that he is making foreign policy in these semi-literate screeds with all cap, just these insane posts that he puts out. But I think vastly more, it's an indictment of a U.S. national security establishment that has proven to this president and Joe Biden and Barack Obama that the presidents can't trust their own national security establishment. Who would believe, like, what kind of effect would Donald Trump's urgings towards peace have had if they had been mediated through drunk Pete Hegseth and, more eager to kill Iranians than Netanyahu is, Michael Kurilla? Like, this is all that Trump is left with to act, and it is an effective tool because it is him personally sending out this just extraordinary. I mean, after he bombed, I think his tweet, or maybe it was a Truth Social. He's got his own Twitter, apparently.
Yes,
but it gets cross-posted to Twitter.
Sorry, just gets a screenshot.
We can't call it Twitter anymore either, apparently.
One funny thing about Truth Social is his name on there is still real Donald Trump.
Well, it's what he was known for.
Yeah, it's just strange. You think he would have just, because, it's his platform, he could just have Donald Trump.
Yeah, true. But it's been his brand for quite some time. It's been his handle for quite some time. But that post that he dropped bombs, he announced that he had bombed this nuclear site, which was just the wish-casting dream of every warmonger in Washington, D.C. for 25 years. And then in that same post, he closed it with all caps, "Now is the time for peace," which is just gobsmacking. But the even more gobsmacking thing, Rory, is that he was serious about it. He brought it about. And I can't tell you that the some of it's been public, from Lindsey Graham and, the Foundation of Defense of Democracies. But in private, the teeth gnashing and the anger over the fact that Trump stopped this is massive. And you do have to see the humor in that. You do have to appreciate that. But that should not in any way exonerate Donald Trump for starting this. Because as Trump himself made clear in the finishing of this on June 23rd, there is no way on God's green earth that Netanyahu could have undertaken this without the complete support of the U.S. military.
Yeah.
Maybe he only had halfway support from Donald Trump, but he had the complete support of the U.S. military under Michael Kurilla. And that's a much broader problem for U.S. democracy than even Donald Trump himself, frankly. So that's a good depressing place to leave it, right?
Yes. So we're ready for peace with our big $20 million bomb.
Indeed.
We'll catch you next time. Here's hoping peace reigns.
Indeed.
The More Freedom Foundation is also available on YouTube and TikTok. Rob's Twitter is RobOLaw, and he's also written a book called Avoiding the British Empire, What It Was and How the US Can Do Better. And music provided by Kevin MacLeod.